So now we're on land reform, okay? So we've been talking about revolutions, and land reform is one of our focuses, and we've seen land reform happen in Mexico during their revolution. We've seen land reform actually happen a lot of times. We've seen land reform even happen right here in the United States. So see, Springtime of Nations, read this real fast. The Springtime of Nations, the revolutions of 1848, didn't produce a great deal of political or structural change. They did, however, alter European societies and cultural mores dramatically. Revolutions in France, Germany, Italian states, Hungary, Kingdom of Poland, and several other areas were a result of socio-political tensions, class unrest, and other factors. The revolution spread over 50 countries. While lacking meaningful political changes, they would inspire Italian unification in 1861 and the freeing of the serfs in the Russian Empire the same year. So Italy unifies in 1861. The freeing of the serfs eventually later on, right? The Austrian serfs and the Prussians, I don't know, the Austrian serfs, they had made that illegal. Later on, the Russian Empire would do the same thing. They outlawed them of serfdom. The revolutions also helped to eliminate feudalism in Prussia and the Austrian Empire by 1850. So feudalism was knocked out. So feudalism, serfdom, they're similar but not the exact same. Middle class freedoms gradually expanded, but basically slavery, de facto slavery, right? Middle class freedoms gradually expanded over the next 20 years. The Springtime of Nations essentially began in France, once again proving the nation's influential role in European affairs. But yeah, interesting. France begins the revolutions, and then all of a sudden, all across the European continent, there's the revolutions. So that's fascinating. Okay, so I'm not getting much from that article. The Homestead Act, America had a home, Hugo Chavez I talked about, he, did agrarian reform. He was like, well, the United States did the Homestead Act, and they did. In 1862, you have Abraham Lincoln was giving out like 100 chunks of 160 acres of land out west, right? And then sometimes it was 640 acres, but most of the time it was 160 acres of, as long as you sign an application, took care of the land for so many years, it was free land, free and clear. You didn't have to pay taxes, you didn't have to do anything except for the promise to improve it, to upgrade, your lot in society. They tried to do, William Tecumseh Sherman promised 40 acres and a mule to black people, to the newly freed men, but they didn't do it. There was a lot of opposition, a lot of people were pissed off, a lot of the racists didn't like the idea that not only were the Confederate people with their own plantations have no power, but then you were going to give the land to the black folks that you're like, oh my God, their entire world just totally crumbled. They didn't know what was happening. They're crying. But unfortunately, or for, I guess, good for them, unfortunately for freedom fighters everywhere, John Wilkes Booth wound up killing Abraham Lincoln and therefore ruined, Reconstruction and ruined a perfectly, an ideal society could have been created. But instead you had Andrew Jackson, who was a Southern poor white supporter. And so he was more afraid of the black man excelling than to creating equal conditions for everybody on the ground. And so he basically, destroyed Lincoln's ideals, and then Reconstruction failed in 1877. And the bright, shining moment for black folks and for actually everybody, for democracy all over the world was murdered and crashed down, including the land reform. They could have turned out well. That could have been land for Native American peoples, and then they could have, the deed and the titles actually that would be justified for them to own, their own land or whatever. But if it was done fairly, but a lot of times these deals don't get done fairly, and that's another thing. You need a massive educational program that reaches everybody. Okay, we have the internet, so the fact that government can be instantaneously effective to your front door, not only just for democracy, we could all be voting online, but we could, just Homestead Act, just find out exactly what you all want, the people, and then get those knowledge, get that out there, get the people to, you know what I mean? It'd be so easy to do. But anyways, the 4 years after Lincoln signed Homestead Act into law, Congress turned to addressing the inequity of land distribution in the former Confederate states of the South. So they passed the Southern Homestead Act. It was passed on July 21st, 1866. They also passed the Civil Rights Act, and we've passed the Civil Rights Act many times, 4 or 5 times in America, but it never worked. Malcolm X pointed this out. I would have pointed out, and Dr. What's his name's class? but I wasn't given the chance. But basically, the Civil Rights Act has been passed. We've passed civil rights. We've passed civil rights that on the buses and on public facilities you're not allowed to discriminate. So we've passed Civil Rights Act before, but this time we were saying even in private facilities. So we took one more. But I mean, why these other Civil Rights Act didn't work? Why would we assume this one would work? And we're seeing de facto resegregation happening right now, right here in Louisville. We see the Meredith decision that's undoing integration. So integration failed. Brown versus Board of Education. Everything is up for debate these days. Everything is up for debate. And while the intellectual argument of saying a private person with their own restaurant can be racist if they want to, yeah, that's okay. But there's institutionalized racism. Civil rights was necessary. Let's stop at let's stop being racist. You know, let's stop being racist. This just seems to be so simple. And that's what they're saying now. Stop being racist. So everybody, stop being racist. Just stop. Just stop. So the driving force behind the legislation was to provide the large population of former slaves in a way to buy farmland for themselves, right? So this is for them to raise this, sort of like how Cassie and them, Roll Thunder, Hear My Cry. That's how they got their land. They had got it was redistributed. So 46 million acres of public domain land in Alabama, Arkansas, Florida, Louisiana, and Mississippi all became open and public domain land in these states could be claimed under the guidelines similar to those of the Homestead Act of 1862. Unfortunately, the prime beneficiaries for the first 6 months were freedmen. Not unfortunately. Fortunately for the freedmen who were desperate in need of land to till. Yet, eventually you find other sort of land speculators who take these lands and the political backlash. So the reason why I was saying unfortunately, because I thought that sentence was going to say something different. I thought that sentence was going to say that the speculators had took it. But so fortunately, the primary beneficiaries for the first 6 months were the freedmen who were desperate in need of land to till. So they needed land to till so they could survive. And they said, fine, here's your land, keep it, do whatever you can. Opposition to black land ownership in the South was extremely high, and significant obstacles in the state level were placed in the path of potential black farmers. Within 10 years, the Southern Homestead Act was repealed by Congress in June 1876. So, you know, they didn't get to do what they wanted to do. Reconstruction ended in 1877, so that was part of Reconstruction ended. When Reconstruction ended and all the benefits and all the programs that Reconstruction had offered were gone. So if you, I can't stand Obama's war policy because we're still an empire, but he inherited the empire, and we can't just unravel the empire as quick as my idealist, you know, visions would like. And in the meantime, he's fixed college to where I could go to college. I could at least borrow money so I could go to college, and that's actually kept me afloat for several years. And then he fixed the healthcare industry, where that allowed me to get my nose fixed, and then also allowed me to go to the dentist and fix my teeth, which I hadn't had for many years. In fact, I remember the first time I've had food stamps several times, and I only do it in sort of blocks, because only when I need it. And so whenever I'm finished needing it, usually 6 months, and then I stop using it, and that's it. You know, that's the point of food stamps, is to bridge the gap from your, you know, your jobless moments, but not to live on it. And so I feel like I've used the system for exactly what it's supposed to be used for. I remember the first time that actually I got it, I was like, my God, you know, I don't know if anybody on this planet gives a crap if I eat or not, but the government cares. Okay, so it was in Lexington. I remember I went to Gatewood Galbraith, and I wanted to work on this campaign, so I moved to Lexington just to do that. And when I got there, I didn't have any food, but they passed food stamps for me, and so for 6 months I got to eat, and I was happy because somebody actually cared whether or not I ate, whether or not I ate, you know, whether or not I lived or died, and that just tickled me to death, because I was like, at least somebody cares. And that's why I think there's some good things to the government we got now. We're a capitalistic system is what we call ourselves. We call ourselves capitalistic and democratic, even those two things are the opposite of each other. But the things that we say that we aren't necessarily what we are. So we're capitalistic, but at the same time, if you have food and you need to eat, then you're allowed to eat food. Sometimes only 6 months intervals. So I don't know if if they'll kick you off if they're so long, or if there's other restraints to it. But I just, you know, those are good things. And so I think housing projects and some of the projects or the services that are available to people that need them, I think those are incredible. You can't take those things away. And so, you know, I don't hate people who use the services that government is providing, especially since the idea is to sort of change how, you know, the distribution system is to change people's lives. Why do people get housing? So that way they can, you know, actually move their lot up in life. So the Homestead Act, the policy seemed to be a bonanza. This is what I was talking about from before. For those who had been denied economic opportunities in the East, however, that was often not the case. The lofty goals of land reformers became very difficult to realize. For title to be transferred to the homesteader by the government, it was necessary to start building within a short period of time and to have occupied the lot for at least 5 years. However, the practice of commutation, a settler could take title after the first year by paying $1.25 an acre. Waiting that short period of time gave homesteaders the option of selling their acreage to large landholders and corporations. And so that's what they did. They would take this land, they would try to take care of it. If it didn't look like they was going to make it anything, then they could sell the entire land and the option to buy to some wealthy land speculating corporation, right? Then they could give some half-assed effort of saying that we improved it, put some, front person on it, sell it dirt cheap for somebody that raised the interest rates, right? Just pull their old American sort of mortgage, wool over their eyes, and then after 1 or 2 years they can't pay their bills, you kick them out. You get your acreage back, and you pass whatever the guidelines that the government was saying that you need to pass in order to own the land. So the speculators wind up getting this anyways. That's corporations and speculators anyways. They always got the advantage. They have all the money. They got all the resources, and they're out for blood. So they want whatever cutthroat decision that they can make in order to make a few pennies, that's what they're going to do. So what started out as a legitimate means to provide a livelihood for many settlers ended in the transfer of large parts of the public domain for government control to private corporations holding large tracts of land. Ironically, what had begun in the 1840s as a way to limit land speculation, keeping it out of the hands of those seeking immediate profit, resulted in a windfall of those very same groups. However, the Homestead Act did accomplish some things. There was a mass exodus out west, and then it speeded the development of that section in the United States. So because of land reform, just like in Otto von Bismarck, he separated all the land to equally between the sons. So automatically there's economic stimulation, there's new land, there's new leadership, new ideas that, the change, all the, the sort of the flow, the ebb and flow of change gets lots of things to be changed. Tiberius Gracchus, he's a Roman who's known for land reform. He was a Roman populares, politician of the 2nd century BC, his brother of Gaius Gracchus. As a plebeian tribute, his reforms of agrarian legislation sought to transfer wealth from the wealthy patricians and otherwise to the poor and caused political turmoil in the Republic. I don't really like Wikipedia's take on anything anymore, since the way they basically did Ronnie Lee Smith. They said that his life wasn't valuable, so they deleted the entire man, right? They deleted his entire legacy. He cured 200 cases of cancer, says 200 cases are practical applications of cannabis sativa being used to actually cure people's ailments, and people are not following up on his research or carrying up on the things that he had done. When he was, not only that, he did a million things. The first libertarian candidate to run for sheriff, and he pushed for the legalization of marijuana, which is the medical marijuana is legal now in Kentucky, so therefore, he was right. It does cure some forms of cancer. In rats, like 20 to 30% cures cancer. Regardless, Tiberius Gracchus is supposed to be a guy that ends the Roman Republic. Right? He passes out land to all these poor people, and then all this infighting happened, and then the whole thing just collapsed. It could have been a very good system. Okay, Abraham Lincoln passed out land, and that seemed to do America the Beautiful, right, where we're at right now, because that land reform took place. So that had happened, and so there is a solidarity and togetherness. We do have more income compared to anyone else out there, so I think our success rate of survival, of providing clean water and electricity to all of our people are better than a lot of other countries. While that's true, I think we could do some things better. What is right with America could fix what is wrong with America. My point to all this is that no, I don't know. I doubt. There's many reasons for why the Roman Empire and the Roman Republic collapsed. They're saying they caused turmoil in the Republic. So when did it become the Republic, and when did it become the Empire? And then just because it collapsed the Republic, when the Empire, really you got to put a time scale on this, and you got to talk to some historians. I don't believe Tiberius Gracchus agrarian land reform killed the Roman Empire, killed the Republic. Okay, so these reforms threatened the holdings of rich landowners in Italy. He was murdered along with many of his supporters by members of the Roman Senate and the supporters of the conservative Optimate faction. So that's really what happened. The tumult was the landowners who didn't want to lose their stuff. So they got all pissed off, and they just started offing whoever they wanted to off. Okay, So Otto von Bismarck, he has land reform, right? He does land reform. He separates it. You could just do that right now, you know, with anybody that has like 2,000 acres. Just say within that family, every family that is of age gets an equal portion. Just like that, you've separated lots of land in Kentucky. And there's lots of unused land in Kentucky. So you can start passing out parcels of land the same way that we've seen in 1862 for those who want to develop their own. As long as you protect it and guard it and improve it, put a house on it, put some fence on it, raise a crop. As long as you do these things, then it will be yours free and clear within 5 years. And to make sure the poor people get this plan. Because you know the land speculators are out there. You know they're going to be sort of targeting, you know, predatoring on these people, trying to take their free land. You know, hey, you know, instead of having that free land, why don't you take what's in this mystery box? Let's make those mystery box people fewer and fewer, and let's make sure we get the right information, the good information to the people that need to hear it. So of course we need agrarian land reform. Of course we need to nationalize our coal and legalize marijuana and get a graduated or guaranteed income for all Kentucky people. Kentucky government has enough money that they can afford all this stuff. They just have bad priorities. Their priorities are horrible. They borrow all this money. They take all this other money, you know, this free money, and then they get addicted to it, and then they can't, you know, you don't need any money for Operation Unite. You don't need near as much money for the prison reforms, for the military industry. That America's got that taken care of. So what do you need money for? You need money for education, healthcare, roads and bridges. You need to keep the uptake, but you get so much corruption even in the road departments, okay? So you got to make sure, just, you know, make sure the money that goes out is being spent for the money that's supposed to be used for. You don't want to just go going around, you know, roads are expensive. So you don't want to just be fixing anybody and everybody's roads. Some roads should die, whereas some other roads should be built for the people. Clearly, that's true. Clearly. Let's see. Land reforms by country. Land reforms carried out as part of Prince Edward Island's agreement to join the Canadian Confederation in 1873. So there is land reform in Canada. Most of the land was owned by absentee landlords in England. So Canada was owned by these landlords that wasn't even at their land. So how many absentee landlords are there in Kentucky? I bet you there's a lot of absentee landlords. And why should we have land that isn't being used by anybody? That they probably, I mean, KU, Kentucky Utilities, is owned by Pennsylvania Power and Light or whatever. So by Pennsylvania corporation landowners or CEOs. So we're giving more money to the Pennsylvanians. I mean, we're basically being bought out by a lot of foreign interests. Kentucky is. It'd be interesting to see how much of Kentucky is still Kentucky. Do Kentuckians own Kentucky, or is Kentucky owned by, you know, the Chinese? Like, we don't know. Like, these are important questions. United States South, following the U.S. Civil War, many blacks and military officials considered land reform vital. The downfall of the Confederacy emancipated millions, but few former slaves had the means to exercise real autonomy. Land, even at depressed post-war prices, was difficult for African Americans to procure. At the same time, white Southern wealth was a result of centuries of forced labor. Property was critical throughout Reconstruction. The presence of federal troops provided a platform for agricultural policy. In 1865, William Tecumseh Sherman issued Field Order 15, taking coastal land in South Carolina, Georgia, and Florida, and dividing it into 40-acre plots for black settlement, hence the term 40 acres and a mule. In March, Congress established the Freedmen's Bureau, whose commissioner had the authority to redistribute confiscated or abandoned Southern land. The Bureau held nearly 1 million acres. The key directors pushed for settling with former slaves. President Andrew Johnson began to pardon Confederates, restore their property. Commissioner Oliver O. Howard issued Circular 13. The order instructed agents to establish 40-acre parcels with haste. Johnson rescinded the order, and an overwhelming majority of the Bureau land returned to its previous owners. So Andrew Johnson, go fuck yourself. Seriously, fuck Andrew Johnson, every fucking thing that he believes in. Fuck John Wilkes Booth. I really like Abraham Lincoln. I like what he did, and I like how he did it with force. Slavery was wrong. It was a moral evil. And so even if he did it under the guise of union and whatever else, he did the right thing, and that's what he's known for. And so he got his head blown off, and he wasn't able to get his vice president. What a horrible choice, Lincoln. Who got you to choose Andrew Johnson? Because he was a Southern sympathizer. They knew that executing Lincoln would actually put the South, in charge, and actually they would get what they want to. So now you have these 40 acres and a mule that are supposed to be given to the former slave owners, which reconstruction with reparations would not fix the historical insult, because that can never be wiped out, but it can start us on equal playing fields. So I feel like until reparations happens, and we can't get past the historical insult. I think that's reparations. Some type of reparations has to happen. We could have had it right afterwards with the 40 acres and mules. Give the land to the slaves that had actually worked the land. That was perfect. That's a Haitian revolution. It would have been a real and honest revolution, and then black folks would have been able to prosper and thrive. But instead, they're pushed and forced on the sides. They're made to have segregated societies and cities and do amongst what they can with themselves. And no 40 acres and a mule, no reparations. So I can see where the racism comes from, because there definitely is institutionalized racism, and that would have fixed everything right there. That would have fixed everything. But instead, Andrew Johnson gives the plantation fucking slave rapist owner, Massa, mom and father, give them the land back, and then they could do whatever they want with the land that they took back. So. It wasn't much of a punishment for them if all they did was just they lost their slaves and they get the same land back. There was actually no punishment for them, because they just basically had to be decent people, quit whipping other people to do your work and picking your cotton. You want cotton picked, you go pick your cotton yourself. You want hemp raised, you go raise it yourself. And if you can't raise it yourself, then it's not profitable, then you can't put other people to do it. Make machines, make some robots to do the stuff. Instead of enslaving people, figure out the new machines and robots. Think smarter, not harder. That's Scrooge McDuck, okay? In the 19th century, Indian tribes owned about 138 million acres of land. The USA land was considered the property of the whole tribe, which used it to cater to the needs of the individual tribe members. This approach to land ownership was different than the white European approach, which regarded land as private property. Many U.S. politicians believed it important to assimilate Native Americans into white American culture and thus have their lands open for commerce and development. The Dawes Act, also known as the General Allotment Act, or the Dawes Severalty Act, adopted by Congress in 1887, authorized the President of the United States to survey American Indian tribal land divided into allotments for individual Indians. Those who accepted allotments and lived separately from the tribe would be granted United States citizenship. The Dawes Act was amended in 1891 and again in 1906 by the Burke Act. Horrible failure. Didn't do anything good. So really it was a horrible failure, but it was a massive land redistribution, and it did change tribal communities into private owning communities for the land that it actually did change. Through the Dawes Act, many Indians received private title to a land plot, but most of the Indian lands were considered surplus and put to sale to white European settlers. Thus, the total amount of land owned by Indians decreased to only 48 million acres in 1938. The tribal land still owned by ethnic Indians was recollectivized in 1934. Land reforms by country. Bolivia had a land reform. They had the National Revolution in 1952. So Bolivia had several revolutions. That's where Che Guevara actually died, in Bolivia. So Bolivia, before the Bolivian National Revolution of 1952, land in Bolivia was unequally distributed. 92% of the cultivatable land was held by estates of 1,000 hectares or more. Then, 1953, the MNR government, led by Victor Paz Estensoro, decreed the Agrarian Reform Law, Law Decree 3464. The law abolished forced peasant labor. So slavery, established a program of expropriation and distribution of the royal property of the traditional landlord to the Indian peasants. So this is just basically, they made slavery illegal. This is Abraham Lincoln all over again. So, they getting rid of the serfs. Revolutions are getting rid of serfdom. They're getting rid of, let's see, what was that? Let's see, serfdom, and then there's the other things, feudalism. They get rid of serfdom. They get rid of feudalism. And they're getting rid of the forced peasantry labor. They get rid of slavery straight up. And they establish a program of expropriation and district. So again, we're seeing the Indian peasants. This is a good program started out for the working class people. Only estates with low productivity were distributed. More productive small, medium-sized farms were allowed to keep part of their land, encouraged to invest in new capital to increase agricultural production. Provided for compensation for landlords to be paid in form of 25-year governmental bonds. So they actually paid the landlords for the land that they took. The amount of compensation was based on the value of the property declared for taxes. First, the government was unable to control the occupation of land by the peasants, so they couldn't stop it. So might as well just, allow it to happen and just say that it was your idea. As a result, it could not enforce the provisions of the Land Reform Decree to keep medium-sized productive estates intact, but the MNR eventually gained the support of the campesinos, with the Ministry of Peasant Affairs were created, and peasants were organized into syndicates. Peasants were not only granted land, but their militias were also given large supply of arms. So this is working people with arms, and they were actually taking the land over themselves, and so they couldn't stop it. They couldn't, protect the medium-sized farms. And so therefore the government bonds, I don't know if they'll be able to see them actually get paid for those things or not, but it does let you know that, that's how government takes over the pipeline, or they take over for the Interstate 71. They had to eminent domain that land for as long as it's justified for a public use. So if you could justify taking over pieces of ground for a public use to pass out your land reform, you can do that. The governments can do that through eminent domain. So eminent domain, we can get nationalized coal. Through eminent domain, we can have land reform. Through eminent domain, and we could do a lot of things actually, but those two things, they'll definitely help poor people. So eminent domain will give us land reform, national coal. It'll give it to Frankfurt. It'll give it to the state. And as long as Frankfurt is always controlled by the people, as long as we have democracies at work and people paying attention, then that'll always be a good thing. If we don't have a democracy, which it's fledgling, it's bad. But there are enough labor unions, it seems like there is a check, but not much of a check. But if we ever lost it, then they could take all the land and they could take all the coal, which is what they're doing anyways. So the government is just a tool that at the very least gives working class people a fighting chance to be able to get what is due to them. And I think if the government could be good arbitrators for, courts, judicial systems, then I think that would be a very productive and good thing to do. I think it'd be a good thing to do for anybody. So let's finish this. However, in 1970, only 45% of the peasant families have received title to land, although more land reform projects continued in the 1970s and 1980s. 1996 agrarian reform law increased protection for small holdings in indigenous territories, but also protected absentee landholders who paid taxes from expropriation. Bolivian President Evo Morales restarted land reform when he took office in 2006. November 29, 2006, the Bolivian Senate passed a bill authorizing the government redistribution of land among the nation's mostly indigenous poor. The bill was signed into law hours later, though significant opposition is expected. So they passed land reform in Bolivia. And so that's exciting. That's good. If, a bunch of poor Native Americans can institute land reform, it can institute the nationalizing of their natural resources. We Kentuckians can do the exact same thing. If Cuba can do it, if Japan and England and all these tiny islands, these tiny little nations can control so little resources and so little people and make, just basically change the world with the things that they've done, then we should be able to do it with more people and more resources. So Kentucky can do way better than what we've got, and I think that when we start putting our collective minds together and start thinking about how we can improve our state and improve our society, we'll come up with some incredible ideas. Those are my ideas. Legalize marijuana, nationalize coal, have land reform, and have a guaranteed income. That would change, 3 of those ideas would turn Kentucky from a poor nation to a very, very wealthy nation. $1 trillion ideas. Those are $3 trillion ideas. The guaranteed income is just sort of a, shot in the dark. If I don't get these other major radical programs enacted, then maybe I can at least get a small stipend, okay? Maybe people can get a small check. And that's it. That's my sort of beginnings for the world revolutions. It's a comparison of all the different revolutions. So if a country had something that was called a revolution, then basically as a historian, you see what were the causes of it, what were the effects, that was the change in society enough to say that was a revolution. Some people say American Revolution wasn't a revolution at all. It was actually a counter-revolution to stop the revolution, the true revolution, from happening. And I think there's some justification to actually say that that's true. So compare and contrast the different revolutions to see which ones work, which ones don't work, and to create a revolutionary theory. And that's really, that's the end goal to all this, I think, is to Trotsky, he come up with the idea that revolutions have to be perpetual, and I like that idea because I feel I'm a perpetual revolutionaryist person. Because as long as there's always going to be people that want power, and there's always going to be some crook that's going to lie in order to, you know, sort of trick people and get them to give them power. But as long as you have somebody that always checks people with power, as long as you always, you know, they could be popular and everybody could love them, but there has to be somebody there that says, wait a second, what if you're wrong? And so that has to be institutionalized, because I think it's more likely that there's going to be a society with a lot of power-hungry people, everybody trying to fight over each other just to get a little bit of power, a little bit of money. Whereas instead of, you know, having a society where it's full of revolutionaries that just want to coexist with each other and be peaceful and love and enjoy one another's company, right? There's less revolutionaries than there are fascists, and as long as there's fascists in this world, then you're going to need revolutionaries to put those people in power who's trying to exploit and take everybody else's stuff, put them in check. Because if you don't put them in check, they'll run roughshod over everybody. So the revolution does have to be perpetual. It needs a clear end and beginning. But even then, you know, I feel I'm a revolutionary. But if I get power, you're gonna have to make sure I don't go past my power. And that's going to be the key to my thing. Is I will always have a group that I answer to, and so that'll be my base of people. And those are the people who will always, you know, steer me right. If I get too far off, then those people will always steer me correctly. So yeah, that's land reforms. It's 1848 revolutions, Mexican revolutions. I could talk a little bit more about land reforms, but that's the general, as I said, the world's revolution. So compare and contrast and make comments, man. I think this is a good, exciting conversation. And those aren't just the revolutions that I talk about. Egypt had 3 revolutions, and they had land reforms too. So lots of land reforms are happening, and I think Evo Morales, I think they're successful. I'm going to check up right now to see if they're successful. And with my reading, I'll probably have more stuff to tell you. But like I said, there's land reforms and revolutions happen all over the place. I think the conversation is a good conversation, and you know, let's see if we can be the change we wish to see in the world.